52 Traders, episode 147.
For me, I spent a lot of time really focused on finding a strategy.
Join Cam every week on the 52 Traders podcast or at 52traders.com to learn how to trade like the pros. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not investment, trading, or financial advice of any kind.
What's up, traders? Welcome to another installment of the 52 Traders podcast. I'm your host, Cam Hawkins, and today I have a trader you've probably never heard of before, unless you're one of his mates. Now, he's a guy from Australia, and he's on the show because he's one of my Automate My Trading course members. So he's gone through my Automate My Trading course where I teach traders like yourselves to build trading robots for the MetaTrader 4 platform, and he joined up the course probably about, 9 months ago, a year ago, and in that time, he's managed to create himself a profitable robot, which he's trading himself every single day, and he's been doing it for the last 6 months. He's got a good track record, and that's why I wanted to bring him on to find out how he did it. So how did he automate his trading? How did his trading career start, and all that sort of stuff? So we're going to hear from him. His name's Phil McDowall. We're going to hear from him in a few minutes, but before we do, I just want to sort of float this concept by you guys, right? So I suppose it's more of a concept. It's probably a way to look at trading and how it's its impact on your life. Okay, so as a trader, it is the guys that trade for a living, it is their life. It is literally their life. And I suppose, can you sort of see whether or not you are heading in that direction of trading for a living or not? Now, the reason I bring this up is because I sort of noticed something the other day with myself, and I wonder if any of you guys have noticed it as well with yourselves and your trading. So I've been playing football this year, done it for the last few years anyway, so it's nothing new, but when I score a goal, and I've scored a few already this year, and I actually haven't given any updates on my football this year, but anyway, I've scored 4 goals this year. And I've scored 2 of probably the best goals I've ever scored. One was a diving header into the top corner off a corner kick. And the other one was a left foot 35-yard chip of the keeper first time. Now, and not even right in front of the goal. This was sort of from the sideline sort of area. Anyway, these goals, I was so happy with scoring these goals that I would literally, for the next week, picture that goal in my mind. Almost constantly, I'd sort of just be running it over my head, like ding, ding, ding. How did I do it again? What happened? Oh, yeah, it was brilliant. And just sort of kept thinking about it, and then gradually it would just fade away. Now, what I've noticed with my trading is I'm starting to do the same thing. I don't know if you guys are doing the same thing as well. So when you do a good trade, are you thinking about that trade and the entry and how that, how pinpoint it was or how you just executed perfectly? I don't know. Look, I'm doing it. I noticed I was doing it this week, so I'd literally be trading in the evenings, and then later on that evening, I'd be sort of sitting there going, "Oh man, that was a good entry. That was a good entry. I must remember that. I've got a screenshot of it in my journal, but that was a good entry, and I want to replicate it again." And you sort of, I'm just drilling it into my mind, these good entries. So guys, just thought I'd leave that with you. I've gone from thinking about football and now I'm thinking about trading, so maybe there's a change in shift happening here. If you're a pro member, jump over to the pro chat and you'll see some of those entries that I'm talking about. And if you're not, all you need to do is jump on to 52traders.com and join up, and it costs nothing more than a cup of coffee. Okay, right, folks, let's get on with this interview with Phil Mullins. Not Phil Mullins. I called him Phil Mullins in the interview with Phillip McDowall. Phil Mullins was on Trading Mental's Match Off, and I kept talking. I was talking to him for, 6 months, maybe more. Sorry, they both got a P and an M. There we go. Anyway, let's get on with it. All right, folks, here we are on 52 Traders. I've got with us today a guy you've probably never ever heard of before because he hasn't got a profile on the internet. He's not a big famous trader that everyone's heard of, but he is actually one of my customers from AutomateMyTrading.com, where I teach people how to build trading robots, and he's actually built a robot that he's been trading for the past 6 months and is doing very well. And I thought that I'd get him back, or get him on the show to just talk trading and hear his trading story and hear how he sort of got to where he's at and how it all works and how it operates. So we've got with us Phillip Mullins. Sorry, not Phillip Mullins. That was a guy off Trading Mentors Match Off. We've got Phillip McDowall, or Phil McDowall, on the show here. How's it going, Phil, in New South Wales?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Sorry about that. I did so many shows with Phil Mullins, who was also in Sydney, where you are. And you've got a PM in the name. It's, all similar, same sort of thing. Sorry about that. But look, great to have you on the show. And, we sort of touched base quite a while ago, and you were like, hey, look, I'm doing really well with, I've built this robot and it's going really well. But before we sort of dive into the details there on what you've done with this robot, I want to first sort of hear your trading story today. Everyone, the guys I've had on the show before also give us this story, which is, their long-winded story into profitability, and these guys have got years and years of experience, but I'm sure yours is a little different. So I'm wondering if you can tell the listeners how that worked out for you.
Yeah, mate, I don't know how different it is. It's probably the same story a lot of people give. But let me see. It's a pretty long story now. So I've been trading for 5-6 years, or trying to trade for 5 or 6 years. And the way I got into it, my buddy was playing around with stocks on the Australian market, and he's a pretty smart dude. And he was right into the fundamentals of this tiny little biotech stock called Primer, and it just seemed like a good idea that I'd get involved and put a few grand on and roll the dice, and lost a bunch of money on that. And but from that point, I was pretty hooked. I could kind of see the potential, and I started moving into some courses. Pretty soon, I was writing leveraged naked options in the US market. I could afford to. I remember one night I ended up, the strategy was writing options, but I ended up taking this leveraged bond trade with CFDs on the US market and just watching my account go up and down. So I worked out pretty quick. I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't really have the money to follow the strategies. So that's how I kind of ended up in Forex, because I was attracted to the scalability of it all. You can trade like $1,000 account the same way potentially you trade $100,000 account. So I started trading for like 10 cents a pip, and then still no success with that, but I kind of found your course, got into the Dreamer and the automated side of things, and I was suddenly able to build pretty simple strategies or test strategies that I'd learned or new ones that I came up with, and I could test them over big data sets pretty quickly, and started to find things that I liked and piece it together, and eventually built something that I'm pretty happy with. I built a couple robots that I was reasonably happy with. That one particularly I went live, but decided it wasn't for me, and then reflecting on that, I was able to build one that I'm pretty happy trading for the last sort of 6-7 months.
Brilliant. Yeah. Now, it seems like quite a similar story to a lot of other guys out there, apart from the happy ending, where you're actually sort of happy sort of with where you ended up. Now, can you sort of step back a little bit just and tell us, I suppose, some of the educational stuff that you did around the currency markets, and how did you educate yourself in that area?
Currency market, obviously the internet resources are endless. I personally respond well to a bit more structure, so I sought out teachers or mentors or whatever you would call them, gave them a bit of money and got a few strategies and ideas back. And I spent a lot of time in price action, looking at candlestick patterns and that sort of thing, pretty simple trading methods. And I spent a lot of time in Forex Tester. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but it's kind of a manual program for back testing. You sit there pressing the space bar, going through every bar. And so I spent a long time doing that and trying out different people and a little bit in chat rooms and stuff. Funding small accounts, usually traded $1,000. And kind of found I was treading water a lot, pretty inconsistent. You do well, but you give it back. But by then I was controlling my risk, so I wasn't underwater. And I just kept working at it.
And so how well would you say your manual trading was when you started looking at automating it?
It's really hard to say because the way I was trading quite often daily, maybe 4-hour bars, occasionally 1 hour if I could. But the sample size, like now knowing what I know, the sample size I had at the time was very small. So, it would take you, I might place, 2 to 3 trades a week at the most and do that for a few months. And, you might have a sample of 20 or 30 trades. It's a pretty small sample to really base any assessment on, I think anyway. And so I'd feel like I was doing really well, and I could tell you at times I was, but then, you sit through the drawdowns or the periods of kind of flat trading, and it doesn't feel like you're doing very well. So,
and what was your typical risk on those manual trades? Would you have said?
Yeah, I was back then. I was doing a fixed 1% of my account, and I'd calculate that per trade.
And what sort of winner were you looking for? What risk to reward ratio were you looking at?
Well, I found pretty quick that I wasn't that into systems that went for large winners compared to your risk. So I prefer to take a smaller winner, and in the process of doing that, generally have a higher win rate.
Okay.
But back then I'd say probably 1-to-1 was as big as I'd aim for on a consistent basis. I played around with all sorts of risk to reward multiples and stuff, but I found probably 0.5-to-1 reward to risk would be something that I'd trade quite frequently.
And I suppose racking your brain back to then, I mean, how many trades per week? And I mean, what did your sort of typical trading week look like? Were you sort of in there every day, or just now and again? How did that sort of play out?
Yeah, it was very haphazardly for a lot of the time because I had a full-time employment. But I actually went through a period of about 10 months where I wasn't employed full-time, and I had a lot of time to trade basically. And so at that stage, I was trying to catch, I think 4-hour candles a day. So I'd kind of like space myself out. I'd hit it in the morning, I'd hit it at lunchtime, I'd hit it in the evening. And I remember I got at the time I was trading with a broker who sent me out a statement that basically said I was trading too frequently and too many pairs. And
Really?
Yeah, surprised to a broker, but I've still got the printout somewhere from it.
You were trading too frequently and too many pairs.
Maybe not too frequently, but too many pairs. I think they were worried about my correlation or something.
Oh, right. Okay. So they were a bit... What do you think they were worried that you were going to be making money, or what do you think the theory was there?
I don't know what the motivation was. It's probably just like some sort of analytical tool, but I do remember back then. So I'm taking maybe a couple trades a week, and I'm thinking to myself, how am I ever going to turn that into an income? Because that essentially was what I wanted to do with my trading. I was like, how can I make 2 or 3 trades a week and make a good amount of money without investing large sums? So I was going for trade frequency and trying to find as many markets that I could apply these candlestick patterns to. 20 to 30 markets that I was looking for them. And I guess I was doubling up on pairs that were moving pretty similarly.
And it's quite interesting because, I mean, a lot of people, including myself, sort of must go through that, mental debate with themselves of like, can I actually make a living out of this with this number of trades? And if you're doing 2 or 3 a week, how many are you going to lose? How many are you going to win? And how much do you need to if you do the calculations, what are you going to sort of come away with if you're starting with, for example, at $1,000, or do you risk the house on it? And it's like, you've really got to have years and years of experience to know that what you're doing is going to be, you're going to be successful in it. So it becomes a big gamble. So it is quite I suppose, a conundrum to try and get your head around and overcome, and eventually sort of come up with something that works for you. I mean, how did you sort of get past that thinking?
Yeah, I don't know that I am past it.
Ah, okay.
I start to think about it all the time. Back then I kind of started to think about, okay, what do I want? Like, how do I want to trade? What would a system I'd be happy with look like? And then I basically tried to build that around the things I wanted. So at the time, and I guess still today, I kind of wanted to be trading reasonably frequently. I kind of wanted to average a trade a day. I thought that would be, sit down, the computer, find a trade, make it, and obviously depending on your win rate and your risk to reward, depends if you're profitable. But I thought that was a good amount without overloading myself. So that's what I started looking for. I don't know that I am out of it. I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it.
But you seem satisfied with what you're doing now, and the fact you've got this job that's got you sort of travelling around the world and whatnot. A few weeks a year, because I know it's taken us a while to get you here on the show. So I mean, do you feel that what you've got now with this robot that you've created is really sort of, it's a good place to be, and maybe, I suppose, good from a mental point of view to set you up for the future, sort of like, getting used to what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm absolutely stoked with where I am right now, because for so long, all I wanted to do was basically have a system, whether I built it or whether I bought it or was given it, that I was happy to trade, that I could sit down day to day and have some level of confidence in to trade, larger sums of money and make it worth my while. And so I'm finally kind of at that point where I'm really happy with the strategy. I still feel like there's a lot to be done. I know I can not necessarily play around with the fundamentals of it, but particularly with the live trading, there's areas I can improve on, I feel. So
yeah, look, I think it's a big thing, actually being happy with the strategy that you're going to trade. And look, I mean, that has been the biggest issue I've had with the automation side of things. So, like, I've built hundreds and hundreds of robots, and it's finding something that I'm happy with trading, which has been the big struggle. And there's been one, but then I think I completely over-optimized it to the point where I was sort of forcing it to do stuff that it wasn't meant to do, even though at a sort of grassroots level it would have actually worked in the long term, but I wasn't happy with it, if you know what I mean. And if people don't know what this is, go back to a few of my episodes and you'll be able to listen to some of the stories. I think I called it the cold shower EA back then, but it was I'm still doing the cold showers, by the way, and it's very hard at this time of year. Now, so just to step back a bit, so you mentioned at the very start of the show this thing called Dreamer. Now, everyone else is going, like most people on the show who are listening to this are going, what on earth is Dreamer? Now, just to clarify things, so Dreamer is actually nothing. It's FX Dreamer is what it's called, and it's a software that you use to help you build trading robots with let's call it a WYSIWYG, but it's like a sort of drag and drop editor instead of having to write code, and it does the code for you. And that's what I teach in my course is how to actually build these trading robots using FX Dreamer software. So you can check it out. You can go on there and check it out for free and have a play and see what Phil's done. So do you want to sort of talk us through your sort of journey into building this EA and how you got to the point where you found something that you're happy with?
Yeah, I've reflected on that process a little bit, and I don't know that it's the best way to approach it. But what I did was reasonably unstructured. I would just choose a strategy, essentially. Well, actually, in the beginning, I wouldn't even choose a strategy. It took me quite a while to understand the ins and outs of the program to a point where I could build a strategy. Not a long time, but in the beginning, I just started using an EA to help with my manual trading. So just to put orders on the screen to recognize patterns, that sort of thing. And then from there, I moved into strategy development and testing. But what I do is I just choose a strategy, maybe from one of my old courses or something that I'd read about or that I've been curious about, and I just try my best to build it. And after many versions, I'd get pretty close, or depending on what level of discretion was in the strategy. A lot of strategies you could build precisely. Some I still to this day can't build a level of discretion in that replicates them exactly, but I think it gives me a good idea of how they could potentially perform. So yeah, I'd just go through that, and I'd start back testing on a small amount of data, maybe 1 year on one pair. And if I found a back test that I liked, then I would expand. But I should make it clear, I kind of had a criteria in my mind that what I wanted to do was develop a strategy that worked across a number of currency pairs. I didn't want to focus on one. So what I found was quite often I would develop a strategy and it would potentially give me a good back test on that 1 year of data without too much playing around. And then I tested on, say, 5-year data. And if it worked well, then I'd start looking at other pairs with it. And I found time and time again that if I was lucky enough to find a good back test on the 1 year or even 5 year, then it quite often would fail on the other markets. And I think, there's kind of, I don't know if there's a right way to look at it, but people listening to this will probably be like, yeah, of course, different pairs have different personalities or different trades. Some might be more volatile or trading different sessions, different times of day, whatever. And I respect that, but at the same time, what I wanted to trade was kind of like a generic, simple strategy that I could apply to different markets. So if I found something that worked on a couple pairs, I'd keep testing, I'd download more data, we keep looking at it. Very rarely did I optimize, or at least not using the MetaTrader platform. I'd kind of do a rough optimization myself, just playing with sort of large, like different stop loss levels and profit targets or that sort of thing. And I just kind of just programmed a lot of strategies and spent a lot of time back testing. And eventually I started to find something that showed good promise across a number of markets. And then from there, it was once I found it, I quite quickly launched into live trading on a small account with it, and it kept performing similar to how it did in the back tests. So that's how I got here.
And so when that moment that you sort of had, I don't know if you can remember even, but the moment you had your first sort of back test that looked like, man, this is the one. Can you remember that? And was it sort of like a joyous moment, or did it just blend in amongst all the other back tests and eventually it was like, oh, actually, this is all right?
No, I definitely was like a back test really well, like to the point where I was going, this is a little bit too good. You're quite skeptical.
Yeah.
More pairs, and it wasn't great on all of them, but it was profitable on just about every pair I tested. So I was pretty happy with it from the get-go, but I was still very skeptical that it would execute in live trading to the point that it did with the back test.
And did you then sort of try and, I suppose, break it in terms of I suppose double checking that it wasn't doing anything funny, that you're like, well, okay, well that's why it's making money, is because it's picked the Brexit over, it's picked the Brexit dip or whatever, and it's just traded that, and that's sucked up all the profits. Was there anything like that where you sort of like were so skeptical that you went in and sort of tried to pick it apart?
I played around with it. Another one of my criteria was I wanted to see it work, the concept work on other time frames, at least to a point. So rather than just, a lot of people say, a good technical system will work on any time frame. I'm kind of skeptical of that, but I think depending on what the logic is behind your strategy, there's potential for it to show promise on other time frames. So I wanted to see it perform over a number of time frames, not necessarily as well, but I wanted to see it at least treading water. That was kind of a stress test for me. It was kind of, smaller time frame gives you a lot bigger sample size generally. You'll get a lot more trades to look at. So I kind of think of it as a possible history, maybe a bit like a Monte Carlo or something, of how it protects its profits. And so that was another method I used to stress test.
And so if you had to describe for the listeners out there what this, how this EA was made up, how would you describe it? And obviously, you probably got stuff that you don't want to share and stuff, which is fine. But I mean, whatever you can sort of reveal would be great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely, I don't want to just hand it over to people. It's not really with my interest at the moment. But I can definitely give you some background on it. It's a pretty simple. EA. I guess you could say it's based on price action entry. At least to the point, maybe not like a candlestick pattern per se, but to the point where I'm using high, lows, and open prices to pick my entries. And I'd probably also say that it has some element of mean reversion, so I tend to fade moves, and I have a really high, risk to reward. So at the moment I'm risking around 10 to make one. So it's a little bit unusual, but in return I get quite a high win rate from that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it has got quite a large stop loss, but you managed to get a high win rate. And obviously, I mean, I've seen the stats, and you've been across 6 months. You're profitable across 6 months. And how many of those months are profitable? Can you remember? Or there's some break-even ones on there?
In that account, I think maybe I've had 2 losing months. One of them or 2 of them, maybe 3. So this month I'm down quite a little bit, like about 6%. And the other 2 losing months are really low, like not even 1%, I think. I should clarify too, I'm running on 3 accounts. So the goal in time, I'm not quite there yet. And I can give you the reasons behind it if you're interested. But the goal is to have it trading across multiple accounts with different brokers. So I've currently got 3 accounts going, but I kind of roll one out, and then once that's moving along, then I roll out another one, and then I've since then got a third.
And when you say sort of moved along, are you like taking the profits out of one and then plunking it into another broker account? Is that what you're doing?
No, I'd like to do that in time. What I'm doing is really the motivation behind it is I've found there's quite a difference in the execution between brokers for the strategy. So the same robot on the same markets with different brokers will get very different results. So what I want to do is kind of diversify my trading through the brokers. That's my plan. But not all brokers execute the strategy well, from what I've discovered. So I've traded with a couple of brokers that, for whatever reason, the costs or how they put my orders through were not really working for me. The strategy was just kind of treading water and underperforming. But some brokers, for whatever reason, I'd love to know behind the scenes how it works, but some brokers do work well. And so what I'll do is I'll put a little amount of money into a broker account, $1,000, and I'll trade 10 cents for a pip. And I'll make sure it's executing well, like over 20 trades, 30 trades, and then I'll start scaling up the balance, add more money to it, and then I'll start looking for another broker as well.
Yeah, it's nice. It's quite clever. And so you mentioned sort of how the strategy is put together. Do you look at any sort of fundamental things such as the time of day or day of week, or even have you managed to sort of incorporate a news filter, or do you care about the news, or are the time frames that you're trading too high? It doesn't really matter.
So I'm trading a 1 hour chart. So you'd think the news events and stuff would matter, and for sure news does generate trades for me, but I'm doing my best to ignore it essentially, and just because of the logic that I did in my back test. And in fact, with the days that I do know that news is moving the market and I look at my account, I don't even actually really know how I would manage it manually. I would kind of think, what is the right decision? So I just kind of distance myself from making that decision at all. Whether or not that'll work out for me, I guess we'll find out. But so far it's working for my style.
And I suppose if you've got a large enough stop, I mean, if news does hit and it's not it's not in a trade already, and a trade triggers, then you've got room to move right before it exits. And the news can move both ways as well, so it could potentially give you a profit, and you're sort of unaware of it. Okay, that makes sense. And what about day of week and time of day? Did they come into play?
Interestingly enough, like since I've built this and have live tested it, in all the new robots that I build in Dreamer, I put in a time of day filter to play around with how that impacts the strategy. But currently, the way I'm trading this strategy, it does not have a time of day filter on it, so it's always looking. But I noticed that it tended to trade more at different times of day on average, and that's what got me curious about potentially going down that route of time of day. As far as fundamentals go, I almost completely ignore them.
And have you tried it on any cryptocurrency markets?
I haven't, but I'm really interested to try it out, at least adapt it to futures and stocks potentially. But crypto hasn't caught my interest just because of the fact, and you may correct me because I may be wrong, but my understanding is there's not a huge amount of data to backtest on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's not.
Yeah, so from that point of view, I kind of like, I'm just really conscious, like I'm not interested in hoping that the strategy works. I kind of want to have some evidence. So if I can't grab the data and stress test it, that's not a guarantee that the strategy is going to work, obviously, but it's a start, and it's probably the best. You could argue it's the best that I've got. So that's the only reason I haven't dived into crypto. That, and maybe, again, I don't trade it, but I understand that the execution costs and stuff associated are quite high.
What's your plan for the next 6 months to a year? I mean, where do you want to see this go?
So as I said before, my whole goal is an income, and I'm actually like, the way I'm trading currently, I can see that possibility realised. My goal is to probably have 5, I'd say, depending on how easy it is for me to manage the accounts, but I'd like to have probably 5 or 6 even different brokers. Ideally diversify through currency too, so have one with pounds, one with US dollars, one with Aussie dollars, maybe the euro, and then have them all running the same strategy on similar markets. And then to a level that, ideally I can replace my income that I'm from my current job would be fantastic. I don't know if that's really attainable in the next 6 months, but depending on how it performs, I'd definitely scale up quite aggressively the amount of money I'm trading.
And so if money, let's put a hypothetical situation out there. So if money was not an object and you had plenty of it around, I mean, would you be able to trading this EA? Would you be able to make a living from it and withdraw sort of regular amounts? Could you see that happening? Could you see that amount of money not being sort of ridiculous, that it could be around the corner?
Yeah, absolutely. The exciting thing, it all comes down to how much you want to risk per trade as well, like what percentage of your account are you prepared to risk, and how much money you have, obviously, to risk. But, yeah, absolutely. Even with the amounts, the reasonably small amounts I'm trading with currently, I'm not far from taking a comfortable little side income from it. So deploying more cash to it would very quickly make it quite lucrative, I think.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm going to get into the quick fire round here, and I'm going to go through most of the questions that I usually go through with my guests, and I'm sure some of them might not be relevant, but let's just see how we go anyway. So, how long did it take you to go from newbie to consistently profitable?
Oh, if you say I'm consistently profitable now, then I'd say 6 years when I got into trading.
What's your mental approach to trading, and do you have any special techniques you can share with us?
My mental approach to trading, I'm not into gambling, so I'm really into sort of an evidence-based approach. I want to see some evidence that what I'm trading has an edge. And once I have that, then largely my current method is to try and detach from manually interfering with it as much as possible. Whether or not that's a technique, I don't know, but...
And I suppose that is a good point. Sorry, and I'm going to deviate slightly from my quickfire round. So how do you... I mean, have you ever had to intervene? Have you ever felt you wanted to intervene? Or are you just like, the evidence says this, so there's no need to intervene?
Well, there's two answers to that. The first one is I intervened a lot in the beginning, not for psychological reasons, but because I was bug fixing the EA. So it was executing slightly differently to how I wanted it to. I can give you an example. Like for one example, I take a pretty small profit target. It's generally around 5 pips. And sometimes the entry that the broker would give me was too close to the profit target, so it wouldn't put the profit target where I wanted. Instead, it would put it a number of pips above. I guess I had a minimum distance for a profit target.
Yeah.
I'd sometimes check my trades and my target would be in completely the wrong spot. And obviously that completely changes what I'm trying to achieve with my strategy. So in that regard, it's back to the drawing board. I need to go back into Dreamer, work out a different way of taking that 5 pips profit without a profit target, for example.
Yeah.
There's a number of little things like that I've worked on quite a lot. And I've got two buddies, two close friends who are trading the same EA with me. And they're doing really well with it as well. But they're also, monitoring their trades. And so we're kind of reflecting on, okay, what's working, what's not, any ideas to kind of get around this issue. So there was a lot of that, particularly in the beginning. And I'm kind of nearly at a point where I'm pretty happy to let it run. Although check in, occasionally. I think maybe for me, like maybe every week check in and maybe review the trades, make sure it's executing how I want. I think that's a reasonable amount of time for me.
Nice. And so, this question is, what's your favourite entry setup? But it might not be. It's probably the same one that you've got and it happens every time. Is it the same entry setup that happens every single time?
Yeah, same entry. Black and white. It's only a few blocks in Dreamer, really.
So what about the strategies to exit or manage the trades? So do you just stick with a 5 pip profit, it happens or it doesn't, or have you got something a bit more complex?
Yeah, I've played around. I've built in all kinds of different ways to manage it. And in the end, I decided that I'm a fan of a hard stop. So I generally trade a 50 pip stop and then I'll aim for a 5 pip profit target. But after that, just that little technical issue I described before, I've actually approached it a little bit differently. And what I'm doing is I've asked the Dreamer to basically monitor the profit of the trade. So when it's in 5 pips of profit, then close the trade via the robot. So no profit target sitting in the market.
Ah, right. Yes. Yeah.
What I've found doing that is actually it's increasing my average winner. Because I guess if the market's moving, this is a guess, but if the market's moving quickly, the robot takes however long, fractions of a second, make the decision to close a trade, and by then the trade's already in even more than 5 pips of profit. Sometimes I think my largest winner is like 18 pips or something.
That's incredible, eh?
Yeah, and that's that can happen in seconds. Like I've made like 5 pips. I think I've had like 18 pips in like 4 seconds or something ridiculous is my record, or 7 seconds or something.
Yeah.
So when it just, I should clarify too, some of those are reasonably exotic pairs, not super exotic, but they move quite quickly. They're quite volatile. So if it's going in your favour, it's not uncommon to see it move quickly.
And I think that's just the difference between, so your stop's a hard stop. You let the broker see the stop loss and it's there. And then the take profit, I suppose the thing is, it's going to hit, the broker's going to, or the market's going to execute all the the market orders, sorry, the limit orders first, and then the market orders maybe second. I'm just having a guess. So it's like, it's going through the broker, and it's got to get to the point where it's like, okay, we've got to, someone who wants to get rid of their position here, who's going to take it? And by that time it happens, all the other fixed take profits have been hit, and then your 18 pips or whatever, 13 pips to the good, and Bob's your uncle. Nice slippage there on your exit. Yeah, which is nice.
On that point though, it does work against you as well, of course. So like a great example happened this week that I'd say you'd probably be interested in is my friend Jimmy. He's trading exactly the same robot, same VPS, same broker, same lot size more or less. So essentially a mirror image of my strategy, and we actually get quite different results at times. And so this week he had half a pip difference of Phil, so he got filled at half a pip better price than I did, and I ended up taking a full loss and he took a profit for 5 pips. So all things being equal, the difference between a full loss was half a pip.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's one of those things that I suppose, people tend to forget when they're, wanting to run a robot, that there are variances, and it could be anything, right? Even though a mirror image, it's just, the priority of an order going through. One's got priority over another. So, or it could be that, one of you is on an A book, one of you is on a B book, and maybe that's what it is, and the broker's just playing games in the background. Who knows? Okay, and let's get on with the rest of these questions. So that was exiting trade. So what about, do you have any recommended trading books? I mean, did you read a lot when you were educating yourself?
I don't know how much value any of them have. I mean, I took value from probably everything I've read to some degree, but when I think about a good trading book, it's probably not one that you're going to get a strategy from, but Fooled by Randomness. You familiar with that one?
Fooled by Randomness.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Was Phillip?
No, I haven't heard of that one. That's never been mentioned on the show.
He wrote the Black Swan. Surely the Black Swan's been mentioned.
I think that's been mentioned. So what was his name again?
I think it's Nassim Nicholas Taleb.
Ah, okay. The name does sound familiar, so I think that other book's been mentioned, definitely. So Fooled by Randomness. I've never heard of that, but it makes a lot of sense to me, even just the title.
It's a good book.
So if there was one thing you'd recommend any retail trader to spend the next month mastering, what would it be, why, and how could they go about mastering it? That's a tough question for you.
It's a tough question. I mean, I can suggest is, I can only speak from my experience. So for me, getting into Dreamer and working out how to use it or a similar product saved me heaps of time in testing. And I recommend doing something similar. If you've got programming skills, great. If you don't need them necessarily. You can use a program like Dreamer or take a course like the one you offer to get started with it. I reckon get into that and start back testing larger sample sizes.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's exactly why I created the courses, because it's not, programming's hard enough, right? Because you make a mistake with a full stop or a comma in the wrong place, and you spend all your time debugging, right? And then FX Dreamer and any other sort of EA builder or robot builder software out there, it's much better. It's like, infinitely better, but there is that hurdle to try and get over of the learning curve and really understanding how it works. And that's why I did the course, because it took me a while to get my head around it. And I think it's just one of these things I'm just naturally good at working out how to get the stuff to work, which made it a little bit more easier for me. And hence why I did the course and helped other people like yourself get to the point where they could have the skill, because I think it is a skill that, there's I'd probably say a good portion of the guys that I interview who've gone from manual trading and moved on, they still do manual trading. Like I interviewed a guy, he might actually be before you in the sequence of these interviews, but he started off as a stock trader, and then he does options now, and then he moved eventually onto algo trading, and now he's sort of heavily sort of into quant trading, but he still does the manual trading as well, and it's sort of all it's a skill that he's generated over time, because he thought, okay, well I need to I want to be able to trade and not have to sit there and do stuff, and so then he learned how to obviously build these robots, and then he went on to call what you've built and what a lot of other people, what I teach people to build is rules-based trading, rules-based sort of algo trading versus quant-based algo trading, and then both of them being quite different. Whereas quant is like heavily into maths, and what we're doing at Automate My Trading is heavily into rules, like indicator or a price, high, low, close, whatever rule. So it's quite two quite different things. But yeah, it's interesting that he's one, and then there was another guy in the chat room that I've got in for 52 Traders, where this guy is a full-time trader, goes around the world, trades, and he also builds trading robots or algorithms. And I'm not too sure if he's more rule-based or quant, but I've got a feeling it's more rule-based. But anyway, so it is quite interesting that, I suppose eventually people do get to that point. And if you are going to get to that point, then my recommendation, my heavy recommendation is don't learn to code, because you're going to spend your time coding. I know how to code some stuff for websites and that, and trust me, that's what you'll spend your time doing, and not enough time testing and doing things on the market or in the market. So anyway, that's my rant. Now, this will be interesting. What's your preferred broker?
Currently, the one I like trading with the most is an Australian broker called Easy Markets, and I've found them good for a number of reasons. Execution's good, customer service has been good. They're currently my favourite broker.
Okay, I haven't heard of them, so that's interesting. What about your worst ever trade?
Worst ever trade? Oh, I'd say it has to be that bond trade I talked about at the beginning. So I went to a course to learn to write options, leveraged options, like selling options essentially.
Yeah.
And somehow I can come out of it with a hot tip on the bond market. So leveraged stuff from CFD, probably more than I could afford, with no stop loss. It was a long-term play, holding it for a couple of months, and ultimately planning on holding it for a couple of years, I guess. And when I think back to that, it's just like, what was I doing? But I remember waking up in the middle of the night, checking the phone and just seeing it. The volatility was crazy. So that was, I ended up taking quite a reasonable loss on that. But It wasn't bad, the worst trade because of the money. It was just like, what was I doing?
Yeah, exactly. I've done it before, and I'm sure other people out there have done the same thing. Now, last question. If you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Geez, that's profound. I guess for me, I spent a lot of time really focused on finding a strategy, and so I tested and spent heaps of time, and I think that's a good thing to do, but to an extent I think maybe I was overdoing it, and it wasn't actually until I kind of decided, okay, I want to trade. Even if I never find an edge, I enjoy the process of trading enough that I'll keep working on it. But if that's the case, I don't want to spend this much time. So I kind of reflected and decided to maybe approach it with a little bit less intensity. And that kind of made a big difference to me. It wasn't long after that, for whatever reason, maybe it's coincidence, but I started to find my feet. And so if any listeners are in that situation where you kind of feel like you've got to get this right and you've got to do it soon, I'd try your best to find a way to maybe step back a little bit and enjoy the whole process. That's my recommendation.
That's nice. That's nice advice. Now, look, the last question I usually ask is, and you were a listener of the show way back when it started. Do you want the listeners to contact you? Do you want to have lots of people that you have to reply to and stuff, or are you happy to sort of remain anonymous? And if people want to talk to you, they can go via the Automate My Trading VIP group that we've got there. I'm sure you're in it.
Yeah, nothing against anyone, but I'm pretty happy just doing my own thing. So, but if you want to get in touch with me through your website, that's cool, whatever. But and maybe keep my personal details to myself.
Brilliant, superb. All right. Well, look, Phil, it's been absolutely great having you on, and an interesting story as well. It sort of reminds me of the guy I had on here way back. I think it was episode 50, maybe 4 or 53. It was no, I think it was 54. Another guy from Australia, Scott Hayward, who was running an EA and making $1,000 a day. And it seems like you're on track, and it's a similar sort of story. Now, so look, I wish you all the best, and once again, thanks for coming on the show. And yeah,
thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
All right, Pro members, hope you enjoyed that interview. Now, I did have a chat to Phil after the interview as well to just find out a few more things, and it turns out that the guy, he ended up getting. He told me about one of his friends who did a $1,000 plus day using this trading robot. Now, although you're not going to be able to get access to this particular robot, I know Phil wants to keep it sort of to himself, and fair enough too. But if you do want to look at building your own trading robot and you're excited about this sort of stuff, then head over to automatemytrading.com, where I teach you how to use an EA building bit of software, no coding required, to build trading robots. So just head over there. There's a free one that I show you how to actually build, and I also give it to you if you opt in, put your email address in and that sort of thing. And check it out, because it's a skill that will come in handy. I guarantee it. Come in handy. It's very, very useful, even if you're semi-automating some of your manual trading as well. All right, folks, until next time, if I don't see you over there at automatemytrading.com, I'll see you in the pro chat. Bye.